If you've already got plants growing in your garden, don't waste them. Sometimes a plant isn't a problem, it just needs pruning or moving to the right place at the right time of year. One of the things we were going to try and cover this week was moving some of the deciduous trees and how to replant them. Unfortunately today, as you can gather there, the ground is still completely frozen solid in the middle of the afternoon. Today is not a day for moving anything, even the deciduous trees that we'd normally try and be moving at this time of year. When the ground is like that, it's just too hard. So we need to wait for it to warm up a little bit and be above freezing before we can start to move them. However, it's not too late to plant tulips. If you've still got any spring bulbs that you've been keeping in a shed or a garage and you've not got round to it over Christmas, you can still get those planted as soon as the ground is warm enough. Get them in the ground this month. They won't flower as early, but they will still flower. So if you, particularly things like tulips or daffodils, tulips particularly keep really well if they've been kept in cold storage. Plant them as soon as the ground thaws out a little bit and you'll be able to enjoy some flowers just a little bit later than they would have done normally. Last week we popped into our nephew's garden. Plants were all good, they just need a bit of management at the right time of year and that garden will come back into shape. So it's just all about timing. Quite often you'll find in the garden you will have a whole host of plants not necessarily in the right place, but rather than wasting those plants, with a little bit of care at the right time, you can start again and put them into a better position, or just simply by keeping them under control with pruning and shaping at the right time. So there was a whole mix of evergreen, deciduous and climbers at my nephew's last week. Now we're back on the nursery, I can talk through in a bit more detail about how to treat each one. The big question that came up last week is when to move the evergreen shrubs. The best time of year, if you can do it, is March. At the same time, a lot of the evergreens can also then be cut back hard at the same time. Failing that, then September again, it traditionally is a good month for moving because we tend to get a bit more rainfall. But evergreens are best to be moved when they're in active growth, if at all possible. This time of year, they're still transpiring because they've still got the foliage, so still losing moisture from the leaves with the wind. And while the soil's frozen solid, can't form roots quick enough to support the foliage. And again, if you were to cut an evergreen back hard, they'd try and put on soft growth, which would then be prone to frost. So if you wait until March, or again, failing March, September is the other key month, then you can go in and you can be quite hard and cut these things back. So I wouldn't have a problem in a garden cutting the bay tree, for example, back by half, if it's done at the right time. So just on the way past, these are boxed that we've been clipping as cubes up here on the nursery. My nephew had a Fatsia, which is a false castor oil plant with a great big palmate leaf, which is a lovely structural evergreen, and it tends to flower over the winter with big white flowers as well, which makes it a very nice architectural plant. Again, it can be cut back really hard, but he does need to move it because of the building works he's got going on in his house. So what I've suggested is in March, cut it back hard and again try and get as much of the root ball as you can and move it, and that's going to be the best time. So two other plants that we looked at last week, which again fantastic structural plants. One was the Mahonia japonica, which is a lovely lemon scented yellow winter flowering shrub. Again, ideally once it gets to the end of its flowering, sort of end of March, April time, that can be cut back really hard. If you need to move it, that's the perfect time to do it. But in his case, it had just outgrown the space because it hadn't been pruned for a few years. So what I've suggested is come the end of March, April, once it's finished flowering, check there's nothing nesting and then go in and cut it back hard. And they'll both respond really well to being cut back at the right time and then give them a feed at the same time. So with the Mahonia, the most important thing really that you grow it for, as well as it being a fantastic structural evergreen, is the fact that it's scented. And again, for the winter garden, it provides fantastic lemon scented flowers. The other thing with Mahonia is it's one of the few hardy evergreens that will also grow in semi-shade and still do well. And it will also, once it's established, you need to keep it well watered to establish, but it will also tolerate a little bit of drying out in the summer. Better in a fertile soil, but it will tolerate a bit of drought. The other one that we still actually had in flower when we looked at it last week was Choisya tenata, or Mexican orange blossom, another evergreen shrub. It should be in flower in the summer. It shouldn't be in flower in the middle of the winter, but we have seen this in quite a few gardens as we've been going round. What I've suggested to him is, again, because it's got too big for the space, come end of March, April time, go in, cut it back hard, which will be the time it will be sending new shoots up from the base. It will delay flowering till later on in the year next year, so it may not flower till August, September time, but it's going to give him a much more compact, vigorous plant. And again, it will respond really well to being cut at the right time and have fantastic white orange scented flowers. So one of the other things that we noticed last week when we were there is it's always important to leave a few wilder areas amongst your garden, because when we had a closer look into some of his plants last week, there were clusters of ladybirds overwintering. So to have a few scruffy areas in the winter in your garden is not too much of a problem. Don't worry too much about all the leaves and bits and pieces, because you're actually providing a bit of a habitat. If you can bear to leave a few leaves on the floor, again, you're providing habitat for insects and worms, and again, food for the little birds as well. One of the other plants that we looked at while we were there is a lace cap hydrangea. These are actually climbing hydrangeas that we've got on the nursery, but flower in similar ways to a lace cap, in that they have florets in the centre, followed by these little paper flowers around the outside. And we were talking about why we leave these on over the winter as a bit of frost protection, but also it gives a bit of structure on the plants. Then in the spring, on a normal hydrangea, you'd cut it back hard to a bud. In the spring, you just go back to a big fat bud, but you do this in the spring, and then you take all those flowers off from last year.
Right, okay.
So just above a bud or a shoot, and then you're just keeping it a bit more compact. And some of that dead in the centre can be cut off completely. But normally you leave this up as frost fodder over the winter, and then cut it back hard in the spring. And the way, no, that's just a new shoot. New hydrangea shoot.
Oh,
shouldn't be shooting now. And the way it's a lace cap, you've got two different sorts. Basically, a mop head would just be completely full of those flowers in a complete mop head. A lace cap has tiny little florets in the centre,
right,
and basically a line of flowers around the outside, and a floret. Yes,
it looks really
that's
nice.
it. But again, really good for cut stems. So basically, most of those plants in the garden we looked at last week didn't actually need to be removed, which is what my nephew was really worried about. It was just having the confidence to be able to cut things back at the right time and recreate the shape that will have been there with those plants originally when that garden was first planted. I hope you found that useful, and if you did, please hit the like button so we know we're helping and doing the right thing. If you've got any key gardening questions, then again in the description there's also some contact details if you want to get in contact. And thank you. So climbing hydrangea is a fantastic plant for a north-facing spot.
Just for the record, I nearly fell over backwards then.